Welcome to Khanversations. I'm your host Muqtedar Khan, and with us we have today General Hasnain, who needs no introduction. He's one of the most prominent retired military officers who speaks on India's national security and also on terrorism and counterterrorism in India. He's an officer and a gentleman and a scholar. So that's what I like about the fact that you continue to write and speak even in your retirement. But today we are going to talk about something which is a bit more serious, General Saab. There seems to be a spate of attacks in Jammu area. In the last 72 hours, there have been three attacks, one in Riyasi, another in Doda, and then Kathau. It seems as if these are coordinated, and at least two of those recent attacks were simultaneously. So is it safe to assume that there are groups of terrorists roaming around in Jammu and hitting targets and getting away with it? One did die, but there seems to be a lot of people around there.
Well, firstly, good evening and Jai Hind to you and all our viewers. Yes, it's a serious matter. But let me tell you, this does not surprise me. Let me look at it from a strategic level first. In terrorism, one of the very important facets of terrorism is communication, the communication of a message, right? Way back 24 years ago, I'm reminding everyone that on the 19th of March 2020, we had an incident called the Chitti Singhpura incident. 36 Sikhs were killed by the Lashkar-e-Toiba in a matter of an hour at night. And the next morning, President Bill Clinton, was to address the Indian Parliament. Now, terrorists always look at this in a single newspaper, print newspaper. You have one story, one mainline story, Bill Clinton addressing the Indian Parliament. And the second side, you have 36 Sikhs killed by the Lashkar-e-Toiba, right? Both become equally relevant and both become narratives by themselves. This is the way it is always done by terrorists around the world, to make news, make themselves relevant. So that brings me to the term relevance. What has happened is Pakistan seems to have lost its relevance, or appear to have lost its relevance in the Jammu and Kashmir area. Because over a period of time, the strength of terrorists has reduced. The very large number of networks which are functioning in Kashmir have been neutralized. Financial, arms, weapons, narcotics, media, overground workers, most of them have been neutralized. The number of hideouts which are available have been reduced to a great extent. That's the major reason why the shift has taken place from the main valley into another area, which has been relatively quiet for the last 15 years. But this is an area which is devoid of that much population. It has got a divided population, 50% Hindu, 50% Muslim in most areas. And it's got the mighty Pir Panjal behind it, which has abounding scope for hideouts for terrorists. So as a result, what has happened is that this period when India has gone to the elections, a demonstration of the biggest democracy in the world, and the third time the Prime Minister of India, the same Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister Modi, is taking oath. On that particular day, terrorists managed to strike. It obviously means that this is something which has been planned, organized, strategized from wherever. But this obviously always comes from the sponsorship, comes from across the line of control. It's been done in that manner deliberately on that particular day. A lot of people question me and say at the same time, you've got tweets coming from Pakistan. Nawaz Sharif Saab, Shehbaz Sharif, all are tweeting to congratulate the government, the Indian Prime Minister and the new Indian government. But I always say Pakistan is a matter of many layers. Who controls Pakistan, we don't know. So one of the layers sends these tweets and one of the layers sends these terrorists inside. And to make sure that the issue remains as confused as ever. Essentially to show that Pakistan's relevance has not been reduced. Pakistan still continues to play its narrative, that Pakistan has got the capability to play in the manner in which it wants to and is still in support of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. That's the big idea which has gone into this.
The fact that they were able to strike on June 9th, at the time that Prime Minister Modi was being sworn in, shows that they have a degree of capacity to strike when they wanted. So why didn't they do this during the election campaign to have an impact on the election? So they thought that terrorist attacks in Kashmir might help Prime Minister Modi, or so there must have been some calculations, right? They decided, okay, we will do this on June 9th when around the time. I don't know whether they knew that the swearing in would happen, but they wanted to do it after the election
That
results were out,
that
I
would
guess.
that would not have been evident that the swearing in will be on the 9th. It could have been on the 10th or the 11th. But terrorists were obviously infiltrated through an area where infiltration is relatively, and I repeat that, relatively more simple compared to the valley or in the Punch Rajouri area. This is the area of Samba, Vijaypur, Kathua. The place is called Kathua. That this is the location where the international border is very, very close to the main highway which runs between Jammu and Pathankot. It's just a distance of about 10 kilometers. So this is the area which has got the least presence of the Indian security forces also relatively. And it is the area from where infiltration can take place in one night. A terrorist can move at 11 o'clock at night from the other side and reach the road by 3 o'clock in the morning. And then he's got the liberty to be able to hijack a vehicle and go any direction he wants. And that's exactly what's been happening over the last couple of years when strikes were taking place in the Jammu region. Because Kashmir has become virtually no good. I may eat crow tomorrow because there may be a strike in Kashmir tomorrow or the day after. That is very well possible. But relatively, it is much simpler to be able to do things here because there was a grid here which was very strong at one time. 15 years of lack of activity, that grid got weakened. And troops were lifted from here, troops were sent away to different areas. Let me reassure you, troops are all back. Not all those troops, but different troops are back. The grid is what it was generally, but it is porous still. And in this kind of a situation, you can't have a soldier standing at every 1 meter of the ground all along that area. So wherever opportunities arise, terrorists look at those and strike.
Now we understand that this is like a strategic move, that they are unable to attack in Kashmir. But if you look at the targets that they chose, the third attack in Kathua was, the report was very weird. It says that the terrorists were going door to door asking for water, and people were shutting doors on their face, which I found very strange. If I had a gun and I knocked on the first door, I would not only ask for water, but some fried eggs and bread to go with it. So what I didn't understand was that the terrorists seemed to be going out of their way not to harm local civilians. And what they targeted was military targets in Doda, and then the previous attack was on tourists who were from outside Kashmir, the pilgrims who came from UP. So there seems to be some thought. I mean, this is just not random acts of terrorism, isn't
There
it?
are there are some demographics involved here. I'm not certain of the details at Kathua, which have not yet reached me. I'm not even sure whether the people who were targeted were Muslims or were Hindus or who were they exactly. Because the usual thing there is, if a thing like this happens where you go knocking on doors, etc., people normally recognize terrorists. They recognize from the manner of their mannerisms, the weapons they're carrying, etc. And you're absolutely right. In these cases, they would have probably handed over water to them under duress. But we are bereft of detail at the moment. We don't know what happened, but some kind of a trigger took place by which there was a shootout, and that resulted in whatever casualties which have taken place.
Sir, Shehbaz Sharif and Asim Munir both were in Beijing for 5 days, just a
Yes.
week before this. And one of the reports suggested that Xi Jinping actually had a discussion with them about Kashmir. I mean, the way the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs readout was, it was quite funny. It says they discussed human rights of Kashmiris. I mean, China and Pakistan talking about human rights is
Human
really
rights.
funny. But so they obviously discussed Kashmir. So were they aware of this operation? I mean, is this Lashkar-e-Taiba and these different fronts of Lashkar-e-Taiba, are they doing this in collaboration with the Pakistani military, or they are doing this while the Pakistani military looks away, or are they doing this in spite of Pakistani military's efforts to stop them? Because
I don't
there
I
is a
don't think
ceasefire
the
in place,
Pakistan.
isn't it?
Yeah, Yeah, there is a ceasefire in place, and it's an effective ceasefire ever since the 24th of February 2021.
Yes.
Right? I don't think many shots have been fired anywhere.
Yeah.
But to imagine that the Pakistan military has seriously been curtailing the activities of the Lashkar-e-Toiba, or what is called the Jamaatul Dawa, or the Jaish-e-Mohammed, or any other Punjab-based terrorist groups, I mean, that is a fallacy completely. I don't think the Pakistan army would ever want to do that. First of all, they wouldn't want a running fight with the Punjabi militants, terrorists, because they've got enough trouble on their hands as far as the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan is concerned on the other side. So this side, they'll always like to keep it bottled up and keep it safe and sound. So the Lashkar and the Jaish normally has a free hand to carry out the activities it wants. That is one of the layers which I was speaking about. The ISI is a layer itself. Within the deep state, you have layers themselves. So one is not in control of the other, and it just keeps happening in this particular manner. And their intent, as I told you in the beginning, is about relevance. Because if they lose 35 years, they have invested their time, energy, effort in Jammu and Kashmir. And it seems for the last 4 or 5 years as if things were running out for them completely. They want to demonstrate that that has not happened. That there is no normalcy in Jammu and Kashmir, and particularly in the Kashmir area, and that the whole situation can be turned around on its head. This is just a temporary reprieve that the Kashmiris have got from the actions which have been going on here for so many years, and it's a matter of time before the Pakistanis return back to action again.
So there are two different perspectives. So one is that the chief of police, I forgot his name, who is in charge of that area, he was saying that the capacity of domestic terrorists in that region has been completely degraded. And so he estimates that there are 70 to 80 foreign terrorists operating in the area. And so these groups potentially are from that 70 to 80. But when we discuss that this is clearly a failure of intelligence as well as security that this happened, right? So the normalcy that we see in Kashmir, it is because of a highly well orchestrated security operation which is continuously going on. So there's a large number of troops, they are there in their place. It's not like Hyderabad where you will not even see a cop until there's a road accident, right? So there's a huge difference to this. So is it safe to assume that Kashmir is normal at all, even though there is no violence in the Kashmir side of Jammu and Kashmir, and because of that, it's not normalcy which is driving terrorism to Jammu. It is the inability of terrorists to act in Kashmir which is doing that, isn't it?
My earlier explanation actually alluded to something like this, but let me also clarify. It is the same army. It is the same Northern Command which is headquartered at Udhampur. It has got 2 of its corps, 16 corps which is at Nagrota and 15 corps which is at Srinagar, the corps which I had also commanded. And both operate, the operating philosophy and doctrine is exactly the same. Sadbhavana, winning hearts and minds, outreach to the people, getting rid of the networks, counter infiltration, and then going in for search and destroy operations. All this is included in 16 core also as much as it's included in 15 core. But what I was trying to say is that perhaps in Kashmir, our focus has been much more over a period of time. There's more media there. The political system is a little more focused there. When the government comes to Jammu, there is much less activity compared to activity in Srinagar. There is lots and lots of tourist activity which goes on there. So it's always in the news. But notwithstanding that, it's also important to bring out that the counter-infiltration grid is very strong. All along the line of control. This layered grid which is very strong. That is not so much in the Rajouri, Poonch and Samba area, etc. It is strong, but not that strong. So therefore, the temptation to use this side is much more for the terrorists. In Srinagar, Kashmir, a terrorist who infiltrates in Uri or infiltrates from Keren or from Tangdhar has to travel 100 kilometers to reach Srinagar. More than 100 kilometers. This is not the case here. It's a question of 10 kilometers and you're on the road. You get into a vehicle and you're in Jammu before first light in the morning. So this is a very different ball game, this entire thing. And therefore, there are certain advantages in a situation of this kind. There are certain advantages when the strength of terrorists is also reduced. Overall, for Pakistan, it's much more advantageous to do things here in this region. Broken ground, broken territory, Pir Panjal forested, lots and lots of hideouts in that area, restricted amount of population, and things of that nature. All this works in favor of the terrorists.
But these operations in this area have been going on for now several months, isn't it? Like this is not the first incidents in the
I would
Jammu
say
area.
almost 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years.
And still, we are still assuming that the security in Jammu is not as tough on the border as it is. Is it lack of troops, lack of government support, or?
No, I don't think there's any of that. Jammu is a big city. Jammu is a large city, and securing Jammu as such, either side of Jammu, one side is the Katwa, Samba area, the other side is the Udhampur, Riyasi area. Both sides, Jammu has its own influence. Built-up areas have got their own influence in these areas. So I am not very certain that it's because of any lack of a strategy or a lack of focus. There was a time when a lot of people alleged that troops were lifted from the Udhampur, Riyasi area to send them to the Chinese border in Ladakh, the Sino-Indian border. That's a fact. There's no doubt. We had to hurry troops up there. But I checked back, and I'm told that the grid is strengthened again. We have enough reserve troops who have come in and occupied these areas. Maybe these troops are still new. They have not been able to operate optimally, I would say. But in these kind of operations, I'm not justifying it, but in these kind of operations, setbacks of this kind will continue taking place here and there. You will get your successes, and I'm very certain the situation is going to be turned around in the very near future.
Yeah, see, attempts to foil terrorism, like for example, there are active ways of foiling terrorism where you actually, like one of those, when they attacked in Doda, they killed a terrorist there. So that is a success. Yes. But that is an active success. But the fact that you have proper security, which itself deters the terrorists from attacking, is not something which makes news. Yes. Like the terrorists came to the border, they saw the cops, and then they went home. So that is also a success, but it is not recorded or reported. We don't know that, right? So when the terrorists do attack, it is a big news. So this is like one of the most problematic things about counterterrorism is that the counter-terrorist has to be successful every time, whereas the terrorist needs to be successful.
You have to demonstrate this. You cannot have a series of failures.
Yes, exactly.
I do admit that we've had setbacks now for a fairly long time. And that's quite unlike the Indian Army, because this kind of a thing doesn't usually happen, where you find that over a period of maybe 1 year, you have continuous setbacks and not too much of success. But that's why I said that it's just a matter of time before this kind of a thing is turned around.
So I want to look a little bit at the political side of it. So let's say that we do tomorrow accidentally or by good luck, the Indian army comes upon this big hideout where those 70, 80 foreign terrorists are hiding, and they kill them all or capture them. Is that going to be the end of violence and terrorism in Pakistan, in Kashmir? No. So is there a political solution, realistically speaking, to this problem, or are we going to continue to have this kind of, a low-level intensity of proxy war in Kashmir endlessly?
You see, the hope that with which people generally live is that with all the political actions which have taken place in the last 5 years or so, with a greater outreach to the people, perhaps, and 1 or 2 generations it will take for people to come up overboard and be completely, what you can say, in support of India. At the moment, there would be still elements who would be harboring doubts in their minds, despite all the good things which are happening there, despite the booming tourism and things like that. Ideologically, people still contain some certain ideas of separatism and that kind. There's no denying that. But having said that, I can't foresee a solution to this issue for fairly long. If someone thinks that you can go to war to resolve this problem, you got to think all over again, because that is the worst way of even attempting to do it.
Right.
With two nuclear-powered nations, that's something which you can't even think of. So this issue will fester on, will carry on in this manner. To my mind, to the foreseeable future, this kind of a thing will continue. Pakistan, whether it will bounce back from the terrible situation it is in today, one can't say when, how, but if and when they do, they will once again harbor all kinds of ideas, all kinds of visions of the future of Jammu and Kashmir again being a part of Pakistan, and then the whole cycle will start all over again. So this is something which one can't really put one's, finger to as to what is the real solution at the end. Yesterday you must have heard Mr. Farooq Abdullah, I think today only, he said, you have to talk, you have to speak to Pakistan. No, you see, any self-respecting nation is not going to talk under duress. You expect that talks can happen in a situation like 1998-99, where someone like Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, despite the fact that there were so much of violence going around even at that time, decided to put out an olive branch and perhaps reach out to Mr. Nawaz Sharif, who equally responded. But we saw what happened, of course, 6 months later, it all turned into something completely different. But that kind of an initiative will be required. I don't think the time is ripe for this at the moment. Politically, it's not right. Militarily, socially, I don't think we are in that kind of a situation at the moment.
So, if you look at the Baramulla election that happened, you have a guy who's sitting in a prison for 5 years, and he beats the Crown Prince of Kashmir, Farooq Abdullah's son, Umar Abdullah, who would otherwise have become chief minister. This was a state, right? But so I went and started reading about this Sheikh Rashid, this engineer Rashid, and what
I know him very well. I know him very well.
But what is interesting is that he's a separatist, isn't it? Even though he's not pro-Pakistan, he's pro-independence of Kashmir, is his politics. So when Kashmiris voted for him, this whole talk about normalization, post-370 abrogation, this vote from Kashmiris for Sheikh Rashid kind of challenges that narrative, doesn't it?
It needs a different explanation. Let me try and explain this to you. I happen to have commanded the division in Baramulla. So I know the Baramulla area, the Udi area extremely well. That's all part of the same constituency. Engineer Rashid belongs to a place called Langet, which is a part of this Rafiabad forested area. He's from a backward village, absolutely. The first time he came to meet me, he came in a ramshackle Maruti 800. You never expect that from a politician. Perhaps you expect a politician to come in a decent car with some guards and things like that. I was surprised. He came and had a cup of tea with me. I later on went back to his village. I spoke to a lot of people in that area over a period of time. I realized Engineer Rashid was a very popular man. Very, very popular. Not maybe for separatism as such. And which is why I think a lot of people are drawing a lot of wrong conclusions here, that by voting for him, people have opted for separatism. No, I don't think so. I think a lot of people have backed him because he's a man who is very sincere in delivery of projects, welfare, all kinds of things of that nature. And they think that he's a very, very unselfish kind of a character. He is a separatist, there's no doubt about it. I know it also. I've seen him, I've sat across the table with him so many times. But I don't think it is that aspect which has won him the election. It is more his personality and his capability to win hearts and minds, which has actually won.
Plus also the sympathy factor that he's in prison for.
Yes. His two sons have run their campaign for just 2 weeks on a shoestring budget.
Yeah.
And they won. It's an amazing thing. The outreach to go. Baramulla constituency consists of Gurez, Kerran, Machal, Tangdhar, Udi, Gulmarg. That's the kind of area it covers. Far reaches of Kashmir. Unlike Anantnag and Srinagar, which are all the built-up areas of that area. This is all the outlying areas. And most of those areas in Baramulla are pro-India areas. Most of those areas.
I went on a horse ride in Gulmarg, and the horse ran away. It was an interesting experience. I literally rode through the whole I rode through the whole village of
horse
Gulmarg.
rides, horse rides in Gulmarg can be quite dicey, and
Yes,
very
it
expensive
was.
also.
I was having trouble trying to control the horse, and I was quite worried that it was not an even road. I know if he got his foot wrong, he would kill himself and me also in the process. So thank you very much, General Saab, for enlightening us about the events that are going on, and I also wish that we were talking about things which are much more
There
pleasant.
is one aspect which I may like to
Sure.
add here, and that is that we must not see this election in isolation. There is a continuum here. The next elections are due by 30th of September as per the directions of the Honorable Supreme Court of India. So it's just a matter of time. In the next couple of weeks, you're going to find the process starting all over again. Are these actions terrorist actions, therefore, targeting actually the assembly elections to prevent the assembly from being elected? That's something which we have to keep.
Will that also entail it becoming a state again?
Well, what is being looked at probably, and what one can guesswork, is that post the assembly elections, the status may be restored to that of a state. So all depends on what the situation is, and because at the moment it is the central government which is controlling the situation here. And it's a question of how much can a state government actually demonstrate, an independent state government, how much can it demonstrate of its ability to handle a situation as difficult as what is emerging at the moment.
So, two former chief ministers of Kashmir lost elections this time, both Mehbooba Mufti as well as Omar Abdullah. But BJP did not contest in the Kashmir side of the election. They did not contest. The general speculation is that they didn't want to be embarrassed by the vote itself, because then that would challenge the narrative that things are normal. So, if the terrorists are trying to target the elections, they would be radicalizing the population by targeting them, right? So there will be more chances of these people turning and voting for BJP. BJP won the Jammu area anyway.
Yes, they have already won the BJP. Yeah. BJP has already won that area. No, the idea behind is to carry out a certain amount of disruption so that people don't turn out, and the elections are not considered as successful. Yeah. At the moment, 40%, 45, 50% of voting is considered a successful election. Yeah. I've seen elections in the past when there have been 7%, 8% voting. Yeah. See, that is the kind of thing which they're looking for.
The message to the international community is that the election would say that things are normalizing. Yeah, I agree with you. So perhaps that this could be a target for the forthcoming election. Well, General Saab, thank you very much for coming to Khanversations, and I'm sure our viewers are always grateful when you join us. So until next time, take care.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you very much. So, and for the viewers, thank you very much for watching. I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan. I'll see you again soon. And for those of you who have not subscribed to Khanversations, do subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, and press the bell icon. Thank you very much.